Lakehead University, and it's great to be back here in Thunder Bay. But before we start, I just want to go through a little bit of housekeeping. So just so everyone's aware, we are live streaming here today. So I'm actually going to ask you, if you can, open up your phone, go to Facebook. When you see it pop up, share this post so that everyone can see the message that Pierre is spreading here tonight in Northwestern Ontario. We want to get it right across the entire country. So if you can do that for me, please do that. I always also have a lot of people come up and ask how they can help get Pierre's message out there. Of course, I just gave you one really good way you can do so, but I also want to encourage all of you to sign up to buy a membership with the Conservative Party of Canada if you have not yet done so. If you're interested in volunteering, please visit conservative.ca as well to look for opportunities there. And of course, donations, donations, donations. None of this is possible without the support of our generous donors. So any amount helps. $5, $50, $500, whatever you're able to chip in will go a long way. So please consider making those contributions. Now that's out of the way, it's time to get the show on the road here and let the fun stuff begin here, folks. So it is my honor to be able to introduce our special guest here this evening. He is a 7-term elected member of Parliament. He is a lifelong conservative, a champion of the free market, and he is fighting to make Canada the freest country on planet Earth. And I think that sounds like a pretty great idea, don't you? So I know you've been waiting. So without any further ado, please help me welcome to Northwestern Ontario and to Thunder Bay, Canada's Conservative leader and the next Prime Minister of Canada, Pierre Poilievre.
Thank you very much, Thunder Bay. Who's ready to axe the carbon tax? Who's ready to keep your hunting rifles? Who's ready to make common sense common again? There you go. Wow, it's great to be here. I apologize for our late arrival. I was with our incredible Member of Parliament for Kenora, the great Eric Malillo. And when I arrived there today, he said, Pierre, you've got to come and meet our seniors. And I said, Eric, they're not going to want to visit with a politician from Ottawa. He said, no, you're going to be a big star. So I showed up at the seniors' home, and I walked up to a lady there, and I said, do you know who I am? She said, no, but if you ask the nurse, she'll tell you who you are. So it's great to be humbled, isn't it? The people will do that to you once in a while, won't they? Speaking of humbled, don't we need some humility out of this Trudeau government in Ottawa? I guess they've got a cabinet shuffle coming. What do you think? Who do you think should be shuffled? All of them. Well, why don't we go through the list, okay? Because I know that Justin Trudeau is watching us all right now, and he'll be very interested in our last-minute advice to help make that decision. So, yes, deck chairs on the Titanic. That's a good way of putting it. But, you know, we're trying to be helpful, aren't we? Or we're trying to be a helpful opposition. So let's go down the list. Let's start with the lady who's given us the carbon tax. Carbon tax 1, carbon tax 2, and then charging the HST on the carbon tax for a full planned tax of 61 cents a liter. Can you imagine the people of Thunder Bay having to pay 61 cents a liter on their gas and diesel, and much more on their home heating, countless other costs on local industries, and of course when you tax the farmers who grow the food and the truckers who ship the food, then you tax all who buy the food. And what do you know? The two Liberals for the Thunder Bay area are voting to raise the tax on the local residents in this community. So we're talking, of course, about Chrystia Freeland, the Minister of Finance. She not only brought us the carbon tax, but she admitted, she said something, she accidentally told the truth. She said deficit spending pours fuel on the inflationary fire. And then, what do you know? 2 weeks later, she announced another $60 billion of inflationary fuel on the fire. And what do you know? Interest rates have shot up ever since. Mortgage payments are rising and people fear losing their homes. It's a pretty simple concept. When you create cash faster than you create the stuff cash buys, you get higher prices. Can anybody lend me a loonie? You got a loonie? No, everyone's broke. Everyone's broke. Everyone's broke. And the 61 cent a liter carbon tax has not even kicked in yet. Oh, what do you know? We've got one generous soul. I promise I'll pay you back. I'm not a liberal. Yeah, that's right. Though by the time I give you this back, it'll be worth less than when you gave it to me. But this is a little instruction on inflation. I'm going to tell you about the Emperor Dionysius from the then Greek island of Sicily, way back when the Greeks controlled it. He loved to spend money, more money than he had, and he kept running out. Does that remind you of anyone? And he had inherited the throne from his father. Does that remind you of anybody? Yeah. Anyway, so he came up with this really creative idea. He took each one of the coins. They were called drachmas. Each coin was 1 drachma. But he ran out of them. So what he did is he taxed them in, and he put a 2 everywhere there was a 1. So instead of each coin being worth 1 drachma, it was worth 2. And all of a sudden, he gave people back half the number of coins they had given him, but it was the same number of drachmas. Everybody's purchasing power dropped by half. There was twice the money, but half the coins. I worry, telling this story, that Justin Trudeau might get some ideas. Turn loonies to toonies and toonies to fours, right? But anything to be creative. But the answer is that whenever emperors, kings, queens, prime ministers, and presidents create more cash without creating what cash buys, they cause inflation. And that's why we have the highest inflation. We have had the highest inflation in 40 years that has now led to an increase in interest rates to the highest level in 2 decades, something Trudeau promised would never have happened. And that debt gets bigger. He's doubled the national debt. Look at these beautiful children. They're going to inherit a debt which Justin Trudeau has doubled with the help of his finance minister, Chrystia Freeland. So I'm going to do what Chrystia Freeland has not done, which is to pay you your money back. But I'm also going to suggest that in the cabinet shuffle, Chrystia Freeland needs to be shuffled out. What do you think? You agree? Okay. Yeah. Not to mention that she's raised income tax and made work more punishing rather than more valuable. And not only that, then there's the cost of housing, which has doubled under Justin Trudeau. Minister Ahmed Hussein has spent billions of dollars on so-called affordable housing, only to watch rent, mortgage payments, and down payments double, double, and double. In many border towns, the cost of a Canadian home is twice as expensive as an American home just 15 minutes south of the border. Vancouver and Toronto are the 3rd and 10th most expensive markets in the entire world, worse than New York City, worse than Los Angeles. That's why we have 35-year-olds now living in their parents' basements, now spilling onto our streets in tent cities. Incredible. Do you have tent cities here now? Yeah. We never had that before Justin Trudeau. Nope. It's new to him. And we're seeing, we recently saw a story of a nurse forced to live in her van. I was in Penticton. The local housing board told me that they have middle-class seniors who've been housed and employed their entire lives, law-abiding, decent people, living in their cars because rent went up so much they can't afford it here in Canada. Well, the housing minister Justin Trudeau hired just brags that he's spending more money on housing. It's bad enough that they failed. It's even worse that they fail expensively. So what do you think? Should we shuffle out the Minister of Housing? Absolutely, let's shuffle him out too. And then we have crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder in our streets. Has that happened here? Yeah, have the Liberal MPs for the area done anything to stop the crime? Nothing. It got so bad in Ottawa, there was an attempted robbery the other day. Man Robber walks up to a guy, says, "Give me all your money." The man said, "Wait a second here. Do you know who I am?" And the robber said, "No." And the man said, "I'm Justin Trudeau." And the man said, "In that case, give me all my money." But joking aside, the crime is raging out of control in our streets like never before. 32% increase in violent crime as of the year 2021. I suspect it's far worse this year than it was then. A doubling of gang violence. A stray bullet fired from a so-called safe consumption site in in Toronto, recently killed a middle-aged mother. That bullet came from the gun of an offender who had been arrested multiple times for similar violent offenses and had violated 16 different parole orders. Why was he on the street? Because Justin Trudeau's Minister of Justice brought in, or Minister of Injustice, I should say, brought in the catch and release system that allows the same repeat violent offenders out on the street. In Vancouver, the same 40 violent offenders were arrested 6,000 times. 6,000 arrests, 40 offenders, that's 150 arrests per offender per year. And Trudeau's catch and release system just lets them out again and again and again to terrorize our communities. So, ladies and gentlemen, what do you say? Don't you think we should fire the Liberal Justice Minister and shuffle him out tomorrow? Yeah. Let's fire him. And then there's Marco Mendicino. Anybody know Marco Mendicino? Marco Mendicino tried to ban your hunting rifle. And guess what? The local Liberal MPs were happy to ban hunters in Thunder Bay. The very people that are the backbone of this community, hardworking, law-abiding, licensed folks, people who have a possession and acquisition license, are the least likely to commit a crime with a gun. Why? Because criminals don't license their guns on the way to robbing a bank, right? They're going to break the law to shoot someone. They're not going to follow the law by licensing themselves. So why are we wasting billions of dollars going after lawful sport shooters and hunting rifles, as Trudeau's Minister Mendicino has done? The mendacious minister who said that the ban didn't apply to hunting rifles. Just like he said there were no Beijing-controlled police stations in Canada. You know, we don't have enough of our own police stations for our own people, and somehow Beijing is able to run police stations on our land, but Mendicino denied they were here before admitting that, oops, they're still operating in our country. You know, if the FBI was running police stations in Canada, we'd be up in arms. But if it's a communist-controlled dictatorship from Beijing that Justin Trudeau admires, apparently that's not such a big problem. Ladies and gentlemen, do you agree that tomorrow Justin Trudeau should shuffle out Marco Mendicino? What do you think? Shuffle him out. Yeah. And then, speaking of public safety, Carolyn Bennett, she's the public health minister. Her view is that we should decriminalize crack, heroin, and other hard drugs. But we're seeing this story play out on the streets of Vancouver, where the NDP government in that province sought and received an exemption from the criminal code to allow people to buy and sell meth and crack and other things. And Justin Trudeau's health minister granted that exemption. And now what has happened? Chaos in the streets, massive tent cities, stabbings, a 300% increase in the drug overdose rate. And she wants to give out more tax-funded opioids that get people hooked, that end up in the hands of children. Ladies and gentlemen, we're seeing this nightmare play out on the streets of Thunder Bay, aren't we? So you're living with it every single day. So what do you say that Carolyn Bennett should be shuffled out of her job? Let's shuffle her out too. Absolutely. But you know, when you think about it, after 8 years, life costs more, work doesn't pay, housing costs have doubled, crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder reign in our streets. At the end of the day, there's one minister who is responsible for it all. He's the minister that's in charge of everyone. The buck stops with him. He is responsible for the higher prices, the higher taxes, the growing crime, the endless corruption. Why don't we shuffle out Justin Trudeau while we're at it? Shuffle him out. Shuffle him out. And once again, we're going to make this country work for the people who do the work, the people who live in places like Thunder Bay. Thunder Bay was built by the hardest working people in our country. People who hunt, mine, who log, who put things on ships to come from Western markets and go all the way through the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence to hit markets all around the world. It takes hard work, courage, and common sense to do those things. And those are the very principles upon which I will rely as Prime Minister of Canada. We're going to use the common sense of the common people. And here's the plan. Folks, here's the plan. We're going to bring home lower prices by axing the carbon tax and the inflationary deficits. Yes. Axe the tax. 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 Yeah, I'll tell you this story. I know that this is a community that relies heavily on agriculture, particularly because Western farmers rely on Thunder Bay to get their goods to market. The carbon tax is hurting our farmers right now. It applies on their drying, on their off-farm machinery use. It applies on their fertilizer, which raises the cost of commodities that are internationally priced, for which the local farmer has to take the hit. I'll give you an example. In my riding, there's a place called Manotick. Anyone been to Manotick before? Beautiful little village. And they have something called the Little Miracles of Manotick. They're tomatoes grown in a greenhouse. And they release CO2 into the greenhouse, which is absorbed by the plant life. And Trudeau taxes that CO2, even though it doesn't even go into the atmosphere. Apparently, he missed that day in science class, right? And so what's the result? It costs more to buy a Manotick tomato in Manotick than a Mexican tomato in Manotick. So customers give their money to Mexico to put the tomatoes on a truck and a train, burls right across North America. This drives emissions up. It drives money out and drives us into dependence on foreign producers. That, along with new and heavy restrictions on our ability to use fertilizer, are going to kneecap our farmers, but not when I'm Prime Minister. We will bring home lower prices by ending the fertilizer mandate, the red tape, and axing the carbon tax to bring home affordable Canadian food to Canadian customers. And we're going to run the finances of the nation the way you run the finances of your household. If you want to spend more here, you spend less there, right? You make the sacrifices and the trade-offs that are necessary to deal with the inevitable challenge of scarcity. Scarcity, according to Thomas Sowell, the economist, is the universal law of economics. There's always more that people want than there is to have. The universal law of politics is to ignore the universal law of economics. That's because politicians are the only creatures in the universe that don't have to live with scarcity. They just pass it on to Canadian taxpayers through higher taxes, higher inflation, and higher debt. That ends when I'm Prime Minister. We will bring in a dollar-for-dollar law. It requires that a politician find $1 of savings for every new dollar of spending. Go into the department, root out waste, cut the mismanagement, and then you can spend more. That's how Canadian families do it when they go on a vacation. They look around their household budget and they find the savings by being smart and efficient with their money. Wouldn't it be nice if politicians had to do the same? You've been pinching your pennies long enough. It's time for government to start pinching its pennies too. Thank you. There's obvious waste everywhere you look. He's grown the bureaucracy by 40%. To deliver worse services. He's contracted out more. He's increased the contracting out by 100% to $21 billion a year, or $1,400 for every single family. You're telling me that you need to grow the bureaucracy 40% and then the work can't be done in-house? It has to be contracted out to $2,000 a day consultants Forget it. I'll bring the work in-house, have the public servants do their jobs, and that way we can lower the cost and stop padding the pockets of wealthy consultants like those over at McKinsey. And by the way, why don't we stop sending our money out of this country to foreign dictatorships? Yes, absolutely. Yeah. No more $200 million gifts to the Asian Infrastructure Bank to help Beijing build the Silk Road and reconstitute its ancient empire. We should be building pipelines in Canada, not pipelines in Asia. And we're going to bring home powerful paychecks. Hold up that sign over there. Powerful paychecks. What kind of work do you do, sir?
I work in telecommunications.
What do you do in telecom?
I build, construct, maintain cell phone towers.
That's important work, eh? Yeah. You'll notice his work if all of a sudden those towers don't function, right? All of a sudden your phone doesn't work and our whole lives fall apart these days. And this is, you climb high and you have to have a lot of skills to do that. But the problem is you're punished for your hard work. You earn another dollar, it gets clawed back in child benefits that are reduced, income tax, payroll tax, gas tax, and carbon tax. A single mom earning 60 grand a year with 3 kids who earns an extra buck loses 80 cents to clawbacks and taxes. If she's earning $25 an hour, she works an extra hour, she loses 20 of those $25 and she's left with 5. Who should work for $5 an hour in this country? Yeah, Justin Trudeau. Yeah, that's right. That question was a little too easy, I think. Thank you. By the way, I want to thank all the helpful audience members who are contributing to my remarks. But listen, this is my common sense plan. We're going to reform the clawbacks and cut income taxes so that he and all of you bring home more of each dollar you earn, and hard work once again pays off in this country. We're going to bring home powerful paychecks for our brilliant newcomers to this country. We have 20,000 immigrant nurses and 20,000 immigrant doctors and 32,000 immigrant nurses banned from working in their profession simply because there is no direct way for them to prove whether or not they are qualified. In the States, you can go and write an international nursing exam, and if you're a Filipino nurse, you can get to work in a few weeks. The ambassador from the Philippines told me 11% of Filipino nurses in Canada are allowed to work. Meanwhile, you're going to a hospital, waiting in the emergency room for 25 hours straight because we don't have enough medical professionals. Well, they're right here in Canada already. I talked to an oncologist surgeon in BC the other day. In 1 month, he said, 6 patients died before they saw him the first time. Another 6 died before they got onto his operating bed. And 10 more, he cut them open. And when he looked inside, the cancer had spread so fast, so much, because they'd been waiting so long that he just stitched them back up. And when they woke, he told them there's nothing more he could do for them. That's because of a shortage of doctors and nurses right today when we have the doctors and nurses. So here's my common sense plan. We have a red seal test for the trades, right? Anybody take the red seal test for a trade? We got some great tradespeople over here. Why don't we have a blue seal test for the professions, allowing our professionals to prove they are qualified, get to work within 60 days, so that we can have more powerful paychecks for our brilliant immigrants and more doctors and nurses and engineers and other professionals to support our economy. And by the way, another simple way to have more doctors and nurses: end all these mandates. End them all now. Get them back to work. End the vaccine mandates. Yeah. And we're going to bring powerful paychecks to our resource sector again. Right now, C-69 prevents us from building pipelines and digging mines and building natural gas liquefaction facilities. In fact, when Trudeau took office, there were 15 natural gas plants proposed. Not a single one has been built, even though we have 1,300 trillion cubic feet of natural gas under our feet, the shortest shipping distances to Asia and Europe. We have the hydroelectricity to liquefy it without any emissions whatsoever, and yet we don't do it because Trudeau will not grant a permit. So those jobs are going to Qatar and the States and to other places where they get the money and we're left behind. In fact, how do you liquefy natural gas? Anybody know? And what do we have in Canada? Cold weather. Very cold weather. In fact, it was so cold in Ottawa last winter, Trudeau was seen with his hands in his own pockets. But the truth is, we can use our cold weather, our hard workers, our innovation to cool that gas to minus 161 degrees Celsius, put it on a ship to Asia to break Asian dependence on dirty coal, put it on a ship to Europe to break European dependence on Putin, and turn dollars for dictators into paychecks for our people again. We're going to remove all of the restrictions that are unnecessary so that we can harvest more timber and create more jobs for our forestry sector. We should be able to approve a mine in 18 months rather than in 25 years to unleash the production of the Ring of Fire, right? Common sense. Let's bring home those jobs to this country. And speaking of homes, we need to build them in this country. Housing costs have doubled because we don't have enough houses. We have the fewest homes per capita in the G7, even though we have the most land to build on. Now, why do we have the fewest houses? Because we have the biggest bureaucracy. Where gatekeepers stand in the way of construction, according to a recent study by the C.D. Howe Institute, they took the cost of labor, material, land, and profit for builders, and they compared it to the cost of buying a house, and they found there was a $1.2 million gap in Vancouver, $350,000 gap in Toronto. That's the gatekeeper gap. That is the cost of government bureaucracy in 10-year-long delays to get building permits, the fees, the charges, the consultants, the lawyers, the bureaucracy, the uncertainty, all goes on the backs of the home buyer. And now we have this shortage. So how are we going to get the gatekeepers out of the way? My common sense plan is to link, yes, we should fire the gatekeepers, that's true, but my plan is to incentivize the cities to speed up and lower the cost of building permits. I'll link the number of infrastructure dollars cities get to the number of houses they allow to be built. I'll require every big city permit 15% more home building per year, or they will lose federal grants, and I will give building bonuses to those that exceed the 15% target. Absolutely. We'll require every federally funded transit station have high-density apartments all around and even on top so that our seniors and youth can live next to the bus or train. And we're going to sell off 6,000 unused federal buildings and thousands of acres of federal land so that our people can build. And you know something that warms my heart? To think of the beautiful family rolling up to move into its wonderful new home in the former headquarters of the CBC. And by the way, you can't build homes without builders. We need to back the tradespeople in this country. It's great. University education is great. I love the professions. But we don't have enough of the people who build stuff, fix stuff, and move stuff, right? It's because we put all of our resources into the white-collar jobs and none into the building jobs that we need. I'm going to make sure every federal granting program for education and training gives fair and equal treatment to the building trades. Furthermore, we're going to give fair tax treatment. If a CEO jumps on his private jet to go down to Manhattan for meetings, he gets to write the jet off on his taxes. But the tradesman who goes from Thunder Bay, let's say he's an electrician, he goes from Thunder Bay to Fort Mac, he has to pay for that all himself with no write-off at all. The principle of the tax system is you get to deduct any costs that were necessary to earn the taxable income in the first place. And so my common sense plan is to pass the Conservative Private Members Bill, the tax fairness for traveling trades workers, which will give our tradesmen and tradeswomen the same write-offs on their travel, accommodation, food expenses as everyone else. Fairness for the trades. We'll bring home safety. Bring home safety. Right now, crime is out of control because of the catch and release system I described. So here's my common sense plan. 1, let's stop wasting money going after law-abiding firearms owners. I will repeal Trudeau's attack on hunters and professional sport shooters. 2, we will put the money saved into bolstering our borders to keep the illegal guns and drugs out of our country. 3, we're also going to make sure that when they're in prison, they're in the right prison. I will repeal Trudeau's Bill C-83 to make sure that people like Paul Bernardo go into maximum penitentiary and they come out only in a box. And as for drugs, we know how this crisis, which has metastasized under Trudeau into 30,000 people losing their lives, it happened because the corrupt big pharmaceutical companies pushed their products on the medical system, told doctors to prescribe it for every little ache and pain. They actually had marketing plans that paid bonuses to distributors for each overdose that they caused. The American government actually sued these companies and recovered $56 billion in return. Now, those same companies are making profits by now selling more opioids to the government in order to fund the so-called safe supply of hydromorphine, which keeps it going. My common sense plan is to stop giving out tax-funded drugs, ban the previously illegal drugs, put the money into recovery and treatment that will allow us to bring home our loved ones drug-free. Absolutely. I met a young lady in Timmins. She was actually a waitress. She had been a nurse. She got hooked on opioids, lost her kids and her family. But guess what? She got treatment. She rebuilt her life. And her story proves what we all know, that there's always hope. The treatment, detox, and recovery, combined with a plan to get a job and get a safe house, means that there is hope to bring all of our loved ones home drug-free. And we're going to do that when I'm Prime Minister by putting the money into that investment. I said we would have a dollar-for-dollar law, sourcing every dollar, even for legitimate things like drug treatment. So my plan for that, we're going to do what the Americans did and sue Big Pharma, and I will use the billions we recover to pay for that treatment and recovery. And we will make sure that we will put an end to Trudeau's attack on our natural health products as well. Right now, he's legislated new attacks, new red tape that is designed to cripple the natural health products that many people rely on, stripping away again the choice and freedom of individual Canadians on what they put in their body. We know the purpose of this is just to make profits for Big Pharma, force everyone onto medicines, expensive medicines that are often highly addictive. I believe Canadians should have the right to choose the use of natural products, and that's why we will repeal this bureaucratic apparatus he's trying to set up. Absolutely. It's about bringing home our freedom again, isn't it? Who's ready to have our freedom back? Trudeau's mission has been more power for him and those around him and less freedom for everyone else. He wants to dictate what you see and say on the internet. He wants to force his views on provinces and parents. He wants to impose his woke ideology on parents and families and children. He wants to decide how to spend your money for you because he believes he knows better than everyone else. As if the guy who thinks budgets balance themselves, who's been found guilty twice of breaking the law, who spent the first half of his adult life as a practicing racist, should be in any position to dictate to other people how to spend their money, what to think, and how to behave online. My friends, I believe you have the wisdom to decide for yourselves. Some ask me, can I take power in the next election? My purpose is not to take power. It's to give it back. I want you to have the power. That is why. So, we will repeal censorship law C-11 to put you back in charge of your decisions on the internet. We will require every university campus commit to upholding Section 2B, freedom of expression and academic freedom as a condition of getting any federal funds. We will ensure there is no central bank digital currency. There will be no mandatory digital ID. And I will ban all my ministers, my top government officials, and caucus from any involvement in the World Economic Forum. We'll bring in tough penalties for anyone who facilitates a foreign government setting up a police station in our country. We'll bring in a foreign influence registry to expose anyone who's paid by a foreign dictatorship to influence and manipulate our politics. We'll get a full public inquiry to find out the truth about the communist regime helping Justin Trudeau win election after an election. And finally, we will bring home control of our democracy back to the Canadian people. Bring it home. 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 Ladies and gentlemen, it comes down to this very simple philosophical difference. I believe that you should have the power to make your own decisions. On the other side, Justin Trudeau and his radical woke ideology is based on the notion that people can't be trusted to decide for themselves. Yet some people can be trusted to decide for everyone else. So who are these special people with all their wisdom and virtue? The same people who have made our cost of living rise, who have driven our people onto the streets and into tents, who have caused crime, those people have no special ability. They should focus on running their own lives and minding their own business. If I were to start a political party from scratch, it would be called the Mind Your Own Business Party, right? Mind your own business. Make your own decisions. And that's based on the notion that the common people are endowed with all of the wisdom and virtue necessary to decide for themselves. Trudeau calls them ordinary people, but they are not ordinary. They are extraordinary. The waitress who carries 10 plates on a tray and serves 15 customers at once, works all day, comes home, helps her kid with math before bed, and balances her budget on a minimum wage salary. She is not ordinary. She is extraordinary, my friends. The waitress is like the electrician who captures lightning from the sky, runs it through a copper wire to illuminate this room. He is not ordinary. He is extraordinary. The farmer who masters the sciences of sky and soil to take food from his field to your fork is not ordinary. He is extraordinary. These extraordinary people have the wisdom to decide for themselves. They should be masters and not servants in their country. It is the common sense of the common people, united for our common home. Your home, my home, our home. Let's bring it home. Thank you very much. God bless Thunder Bay.